Imagine this. One moment you're having just a quiet moment by a lake, taking a breath in the cool night air. The next, over 2 hours have simply vanished, gone from your memory. And you find yourself in a place you don't recognize at all. Your car perched in an utterly impossible position. You're just left with this experience that, well, defies logic, leaving you wondering, what on earth just happened? Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on a mission, really, to unravel a truly extraordinary account, a vivid narrative of unexplained relocation, missing time, and even a mysterious presence. Our source material comes from these fascinating excerpts titled Vanished Time, Miraculous Relocation, and a Protector Being. And we're going to pull out every crucial nugget of knowledge this story holds for you.
Absolutely. And for listeners who really follow the, let's say, the intricacies of anomalous experiences, this deep dive offers a really compelling case study. We'll be meticulously examining the specific details provided by a listener, looking for patterns, maybe archetypes, and insights that, frankly, challenge our assumptions about reality. This isn't just about relaying a story, it's about understanding the layers, getting into the analysis of a high strangeness event.
All right, let's peel back the layers then. This is a fascinating one. Our journey begins late one evening, back in 2016. Picture this. A woman has just finished watching a Holly Holm fight on TV with friends. It's winding down, right? So she decides to head home. But first, she makes a brief stop at a lake, maybe around 1:00 a.m., just for a quiet moment, maybe a cigarette. It's a completely ordinary, relatable scene.
Right. Something many of us might do. That
Yeah.
quiet solitude.
Exactly. But then, boom, everything shifts. Her last conscious memory is simply lighting that cigarette by the lake. And that's where the ordinary just completely ends. The next thing she knows, 2.5 hours, inexplicably passed. And her entire world has profoundly shifted. It's a sudden, really jarring jump from the mundane into something, well, unknown.
Yeah, and that immediate, profound experience of missing time, that's a cornerstone, really, in studying anomalous phenomena. It's much more than just, a memory lapse. In the research community, especially within ufology and these contact narratives, it's often indicative of what some researchers call an Oz factor experience.
An Oz factor experience. Okay, tell me more about that. What does that mean exactly? Certainly. It describes this kind of momentary suspension of ordinary reality. It's like the environment around the witness seems to go quiet, almost unnaturally still, like they've stepped into a different dimension maybe, or like a bubble of altered perception. It's characterized by this unearthly stillness, sometimes a shift in colors or sounds, and crucially, a significant unrecoverable chunk of missing time. This isn't just, common amnesia. It suggests some kind of external influence on consciousness. It signals a departure from our usual understanding of cause and effect. It's really our first major analytical signal that we're dealing with something truly extraordinary here, not just a simple misremembered evening.
Okay, that distinction is huge. And the disorientation she must have felt when she woke up, I can only imagine, especially given what she discovered next. So she comes to more than 2 hours later, completely disoriented, zero idea where she is. This isn't just losing track of time, it's complete spatial displacement. 1 minute, familiar lake, the next, totally foreign, confusing surroundings. That feeling of being utterly lost, both in time and space, must have been overwhelming.
Absolutely overwhelming.
And in that moment of just extreme confusion, her instinct kicks in, and she reaches out for help. She calls a cousin and his friend. She's trying desperately to describe her bizarre surroundings, and based solely on her, disoriented description, one of the men starts to piece together an idea of where she might be. Can you imagine how fragmented those descriptions must have been for someone to even begin to locate her? Well, that reliance on a trusted contact in a moment of extreme disorientation, that's very human, isn't it? Something we all instinctively do when we're lost or in trouble. But what elevates the situation beyond just being lost is the nature of that disorientation, the why behind it. In anomalous research, we often see this temporary suspension of, let's say, normal cognitive processing during these missing time events. The fact that she was spatially displaced and her vehicle with her suggests a profound and, well, non-conventional interaction with her environment. It's a complete disruption of expected physical laws. It forces us to consider external, possibly non-human agency, even if we can't immediately define what that is.
That's a really powerful point. And the physical evidence they find when they arrive just takes us into even more baffling territory. Her cousin and friend finally get there, and they find her car in what she just calls an impossible spot. And we're not talking about tricky parking. This defies, well, everything.
Sounds like it.
Let's get into the specifics she provided. Her car was up on a hill and surrounded by trees. Okay. And she described it vividly, saying, and this is a quote, "It was like someone picked my car up from at the lake and lowered it into a small opening on top of fallen trees and rocks where it just barely fit.
Mm.
And to make it even weirder, the car was pointing the opposite way from how she could have possibly arrived or driven it. So this wasn't a wrong turn. This was placement, manipulation."
Precise placement, it sounds like.
Exactly. She was absolutely firm on this point. There was no way I could have driven it up to that location. No way. She also mentioned her car doors would barely even open because of how tightly it was wedged in there. She had to roll down the window just to climb out. It paints this picture of a vehicle deliberately, precisely placed, not driven.
Incredible.
And as if that weren't enough, she noticed another really strange, tangible detail. My car was covered in a fine, glittery kind of sand. And listen to this. The sand was also inside on the seats, windows, and dashboard. It wasn't just dusted on the outside, it was in the cabin. Almost like the car had traveled through, I don't know, an environment made of this stuff.
Okay, see, this specific detail about the car's placement, this is where the case really transitions from a purely subjective experience to an objective physical anomaly.
Yeah.
You have a multi-ton vehicle. It's been moved without any conventional means, no tow truck marks, no drag marks initially, lifted over obstacles, placed with remarkable precision into an opening it's just barely fit.
What's truly fascinating here is the lack of damage during that initial relocation, which, as you'll get to, contrasts sharply with the damage incurred during its retrieval. That suggests a level of control, a method that's entirely foreign to, well, our known capabilities.
Right, so it was placed perfectly without a scratch, but getting it down caused a ton of damage. That contrast is really stark.
Precisely. And then you have this glittery sand. Now, while it might seem trivial to some, physical traces like this are critically important in anomalous research. They're data points. We've actually seen reports of similar fine, metallic, or crystalline residues in other high strangeness cases. Sometimes they're associated with alleged craft or landing sites. It acts as this unidentifiable physical trace that just compounds the mystery. It's not just an absence of explanation, it's the presence of inexplicable evidence. It's a data point that resists easy categorization and points towards a source outside our current understanding of, say, materials or even atmospheric composition.
It absolutely adds another layer to the whole enigma. And the sheer effort required to undo this impossible placement just highlights how strange it was. She talks about the brutal reality of getting the car down. When they tried to pull my car down, the logs and rocks underneath and in front of it caused all kinds of damage. She says basically they dragged my car down a hill and over trees and everything to get it back down to the road, even denting it up in a few places. So it arrives pristine, but can't leave without significant damage. That really speaks volumes about its initial positioning, doesn't it?
It really does. A testament to the impossibility.
And, naturally, when she recounted this incredible ordeal to her husband, he was skeptical. He thought she was, quote, crazy and making the whole thing up. But even with his skepticism, the crucial part is he couldn't explain how the car got there. He couldn't just dismiss the physical reality, even if the story behind it sounded completely outlandish.
The physical evidence was undeniable, even to a skeptic.
Exactly. Now let's sprinkle in a couple more peculiar details that just add to the overall bizarre tapestry of this night. She mentioned, sort of offhand, my socks were wet inside of my boots, but the outside of my boots were dry. How does that even happen? It defies simple logic. Wet inside, dry outside. Odd. And then there's the strange phone call she supposedly made for help. One of her relatives reported that when she called, her voice sounded like I was underwater and gurgling. But crucially, the woman herself doesn't remember making the call at all. And her cell phone, no record of it, ever. A phantom call with a strange, distorted voice. It just adds another layer of unreality to everything.
These are what we often categorize as high strangeness details, and they are incredibly significant, even if they seem small. The wet socks inside, dry boots, for instance. It defies basic physics, basic hydrology. How does water get inside without wetting the outside? It's a minor detail, sure, but it's precisely these smaller, almost nonsensical discrepancies that highlight the non-ordinary nature of the event. They resist any coherent, conventional explanation. They act as additional markers that reality, as we typically understand it, was temporarily, well, suspended or altered for her.
And the gurgling phone call she doesn't remember making with no record, what do you make of that specifically? It sounds almost otherworldly.
It's a compelling aspect, isn't it? Such auditory distortions, especially coupled with a complete lack of memory of making the call and no digital footprint. It strongly suggests an altered state of consciousness during the event. It's almost as if she was communicating from a space, or maybe a condition, that wasn't fully integrated with her normal waking reality. Or perhaps even communicating from a moment within that period of missing time. These kinds of subjective experiences, when you combine them with the objective physical evidence like the car, they really push us to consider models of reality that go beyond simple materialist explanations. It's a classic example of anomalous data that resists easy assimilation into our standard frameworks.
It truly does. And speaking of things that resist easy dismissal, this deep dive also includes some critical third-party verification. The friend who actually helped rescue her that night, a man who's now retired from the federal government, he recalls his perspective. And that adds significant weight, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely critical weight, yes.
His words perfectly confirmed the bizarre placement of the car. He stated very clearly, "The car was in the weirdest spot and I can't explain how it got up there without damaging the car." Direct confirmation. He also corroborated the struggle to get it down, saying, "We ripped the hell out of it trying to get it down." His words, not mine. He even remembers exactly where they found her, noting it was up the dirt road behind where I work. So his account lines up perfectly with hers. It adds this powerful layer of credibility, especially considering his background, to the seemingly impossible parts of her story.
Yeah, that independent corroboration from a seemingly credible witness, particularly one with that kind of government background, is absolutely pivotal. It elevates the narrative from being purely an individual subjective experience, which can sometimes be questioned, to a shared anomalous event. Two people witnessed the impossible state of the car. When someone with apparently no vested interest in the story, and a professional background often associated with critical thinking and structured observation, confirms the physical impossibility. It really forces us to reevaluate what we consider proof. It shifts the incident from, "she said this happened," to "we observed this state," even if the how remains completely elusive. It significantly strengthens the claim that something genuinely extraordinary occurred, making it much harder to simply dismiss the event as delusion or fabrication.
Okay, so this brings us to maybe the most ethereal, perhaps even spiritual element of her account. The woman reported seeing what she described as a protector being standing behind her car, visible in her rearview mirror. But when she finally managed to climb out of that impossibly placed car, the figure was just gone. A fleeting, mysterious presence that seemed to be observing her.
Interesting. A being, not a craft.
Exactly. She was very clear on that point. She saw no lights, no craft, only that single being. And this is important because it distinguishes her personal encounter from maybe more common descriptions of unexplained phenomena, where you often hear about craft or lights being central to the experience. However, despite her uniquely personal experience, she did report the whole incident to the authorities. And here's another layer of strangeness. They told her there were actually many sightings of strange lights in the surrounding area that night. But she reiterated to them, no, she never saw any lights, only the being. So her personal encounter with this protector being occurred within this broader context of regional unexplained activity, yet she didn't directly witness that wider phenomenon herself.
That protector being archetype is fascinating. It actually recurs across many reported contactee narratives throughout history. These figures are often perceived by the experiencer as benevolent, sometimes guiding, or just observant presences, even when the events themselves are disorienting or frightening. From a psychological perspective, one can argue it suggests a human attempt to impose meaning, maybe a sense of safety, onto experiences that are otherwise overwhelming and fundamentally alien. The fact that she saw this being specifically but no lights or craft, well, it does suggest a highly personalized interaction, almost as if the event or her perception of it was uniquely tailored to her.
So it's like she might have been part of a larger regional phenomenon, this wave of lights, but her specific experience was uniquely focused and isolated from that.
Exactly, or at least her perception was. It forces you to consider multiple interpretations, doesn't it? Was she experiencing a specific, maybe more intimate facet of a larger, more diffuse phenomenon happening around her? Or was her consciousness somehow filtered during the event, maybe only allowing her to perceive the elements directly relevant to her immediate encounter, the being, the car, the sand, while the broader lights were happening in a different perceptual or even physical dimension, just beyond her direct grasp? It really highlights the complexity of these anomalous events. Individual experiences might not directly overlap with wider, less defined observations, even if they're connected. It forces us to ponder the many ways the unknown might manifest and interact with our perception, challenging that simple idea of a single, objective reality for all witnesses involved.
Wow, truly mind-boggling stuff, and a really profound way to think about the layers involved in these experiences. So, as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's just quickly recap what we've unpacked for you today. It's quite a list. We have a woman's car miraculously relocated, placed in an impossible spot on a hill, surrounded by trees, no damage going in, heavy damage coming out. 2.5 hours of missing time, fitting that Oz factor profile. Strange, glittery sand covering and permeating the car, suggesting anomalous physical traces. Those bizarre details like wet socks inside dry boots and that gurgling, unrecorded phone call markers of high strangeness, possibly altered states. And finally, the fleeting vision of a protector being an archetypal contact figure, all critically corroborated by an independent, credible witness. And this all happened against a backdrop of wider, unexplained light sightings in the area, even though she herself never saw those lights. It's a story that just defies any simple categorization.
It really does. And this account offers you, the listener, a really unique opportunity to consider the limits of our current understanding, maybe the boundaries of consensus reality itself. It's a potent illustration of how personal experience, undeniable physical impossibilities, and even official reports can weave together into a narrative that truly challenges our basic assumptions. It really encourages you to think critically, not just about what constitutes valid evidence in these complex cases, but maybe how we interpret and integrate events that fall so far outside our conventional worldview.
Absolutely. And that leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to mull over. If an experience can be so physically disruptive, moving cars, leaving strange residues, things corroborated by others, yet remains so deeply personal in its encounter with an other, like seeing a being but not the lights everyone else reported, what does that tell us about the layers of perception, about reality itself, and about the truly unknown that might be operating just beyond our grasp, perhaps interacting with us in ways we barely comprehend? Maybe the most profound mysteries aren't just out there, but are intimately interwoven with the very fabric of our subjective experience, our individual consciousness. Something to think about.